Hello everybody, and welcome to the first look at a post-apocalyptic city survival builder known as Homeseek. This, by the way, is a free demo that we're trying out now, that's available on Steam, with a game coming sometime soon, so this is of course like an early access incomplete version. A preview of what's to come for this game. This game really in many ways reminds me of Frostpunk with all the expeditions and the exploration system works and resource gathering, but also reminds me a bit of games like Surviving the Aftermath and also Endzone, A World Apart. So, let me know what you think about the game down below in the comment section. Thanks for subscribing, and please do not turn on the notification bell so that YouTube doesn't bombard you with other than gaming content. Thank you very much for destroying the like button. Well, without further ado, let's jump into our first look at Homeseek. Let's go.
Today is June 6, 2101. I'm afraid that this may be one of the last of my writings. The water's finally run out down here, just like it did in the old world all those years ago. Others are finally prepping to leave, to emerge back into the world, because now they must go, perish from thirst. I was just a child when the rivers ran dry and the bombs began to fall. And now I've lived an entire lifetime in the darkness of this place. I barely even remember the world of my childhood, a world underneath a bright sun and blue sky. My skin is pale, my muscles are weak. I'd only be a burden to them in the harsh journey ahead. They're still young and adaptable. I know firsthand of their strength and resilience. If there's water to be found up there, they'll be the ones to find it. If there's anything to salvage from the ruins, they'll be the ones to do so. They know nothing of the society of the old world. They are the ones who might have a chance to rebuild civilization.
A new beginning. The torn and faded map from the bunker indicates a small valley ahead has a shallow water table. And there, we indeed find two simple wells dug by some past group of travelers. Almost miraculously, they seem to have some water left pulling at their bottoms, but we doubt their reserves will last us very long. Either way, with our supplies running low, we don't really have much of a choice, and this valley seems as good of a place as any to settle down. Lifeblood. Our community is desperate for a new source of drinking water. However, even the dirty water from the makeshift wells is currently beyond our reach, considering we have no means by which to lift the water from their bottoms without falling in. We need to build some simple contraption that will allow us access to this vital resource. Foraging. With the last of the pre-packaged rations gone, we need something to fill our stomachs. Small bushes struggling to grow in the dry wasteland bear in substantial clusters of nuts and berries. And though we can't be certain they will be safe for humans, we have no other choice. Daily needs. We must secure enough resources for everyone, add workers on the water extractor and the connected berry bushes, in order to do so. Keep in mind each citizen needs 500 food and 500 water every day. You will also need more scrap, so make sure you assign some workers in a scrap pile too. Health concerns. The poisons of the old world saturate our food and water, making the simple act of eating and drinking exacts a toll on our health. It is certainly no coincidence that an epidemic of illness has surged through our community ever since we began foraging for our food, instead of relying on the sterile pre-packaged rations of our bunker. We need to find a way to combat these health concerns. Wasteland medicine. Illness and injury lie in wait around every corner in this unforgiving place. Even our food and water make us sick just by consuming them. Until we find a way to make our community safer, we need to be able to treat unhealthy citizens. If we don't find a solution soon, it might not be long before there isn't a single healthy individual among us. Shantytown, a community that formed in the fresh ruins of the old world, itself now long abandoned. Some of us find it hard to believe that such living conditions were once considered only appropriate for the most pitiably poor parts of society, rather than being the norm. Scavengers have since picked most of it clean, but perhaps we might still find something useful among the dusty rows of decrepit makeshift dwellings. As our expedition makes its way on, we begin to pass huts and shacks in growing frequency. A community once lived here, but it is now long abandoned. Searching for supplies through some of the ruins, we hear a weak growl from a nearby shack. We find a mangy dog there, its leg caught under some debris. What should we do? Try to free its leg and give it some food and water. The dog looks dangerous. We should stay away from it. It looks like it still could have some meat on its bones. We carefully approach the dog and kill it. We salvage some of its carcass as edible meat. We continue on our way, our supplies somewhat bolstered by the animal sacrifice. Continuing onward, we find a trailer home that seems to be in slightly better condition than the other dwellings. A large red cross is painted on one side. Before entering, we find a large locked trunk around the back. It seems like a container designed to be safe even from large wildlife when left outdoors. What should we do? Maybe we can jimmy open the lock with the right tool. Maybe we can just break it open. The container is easy to open with a thin aluminum sheet. Inside, we find it full of rare medical supplies. We come around to the front of the trailer home and break down the door. We find multiple corpses lying on cots inside, their decayed flesh still connected to IV drips. It seems the whole trailer once served as a makeshift hospital. The equipment seems in good enough condition to use for our own purposes. We pack up the medical equipment and prepare to haul it back home. With the equipment and expertise we've gained from this location, we'll be able to better treat our own community's medical problems. We can now research the medical center. Strangelanders arrive. A group of strange wastelanders arrive on our doorstep, apparently wanting to join our community. They speak in a weird accent, and we don't recognize them from our time in the bunker. They must have somehow survived on the surface all these past years. They have brought a small offering of food and water in an attempt to convince us of their good intentions. But others of us are prejudiced against their strange mannerisms and wish not to accept them with open arms. Storm warning. Great brown clouds that appear on the horizon quickly threaten to bear down on our settlement. It won't be long before a dust storm sweeps through our encampment, occluding vision and making it almost impossible to breathe. Batten down the hatches. The dark brown clouds far on the horizon are certain signs of a dust storm. We need to make sure everyone has enough shelter to safely ride out the storm. If not, who knows what might go wrong? Mudlands. Long ago, fresh, clean water was so abundant that the idea it could be gone one day was simply inconceivable. Now the whole world is dusty and barren, and all places that might have once been wet are dry as bone. Cracked earth and sand give way to viscous mud as we near the wetlands, making our journey all the more arduous. Before we want any water at all, though, we come across a small old ship, completely beached, lying on its side on dry earth. None of us have any idea how it could have gotten there. What should we do? Check inside the ship for anything of value. We should just move on. We spend some time exploring the ship. The ship's rusty engine block still has some parts that seem like they could be salvaged as scrap. Exploring deeper into the wetlands, a single figure soon appears over the horizon, coming towards us. It walks on stilts through the mud, and with every step, metallic jingles can be heard from a great sack it carries on its back. It stops before nearing our party, then raises a mud-slathered hand to point at us. What should we do? Offer it some of our food. Offer it some of our scrap. Attack the mysterious figure. Campus. A center of learning in the old world. There was once such abundance that people could gather at these places simply to learn all day, for years on end, without needing to worry about securing food or water for themselves. There are no more students there anymore, but maybe it could still teach us something. Nevertheless, our expedition finally reaches the outskirts of the campus. The large buildings of cement and glass, though broken and abandoned, seem to us like they could have once encompassed an entire city in their own right. We first come across a large hall that has been recently barricaded shut. After banging on the door, a voice from inside yells back, "Who's there?" What should we do? These people must be fellow survivors. We should invite them to our community. Whoever's in there could be dangerous. We should leave them alone. We take some time to explain who we are. After realizing that we mean no harm, the survivors who have barricaded themselves inside the hull seem very interested in joining us. We come across a small grouping of buildings. A cursory pass through some yields nothing of value other than scraps of faded paper. One partially collapsed structure, though, with a sign out front reading chemical engineering, seems as if it might have some salvageable scrap among its rubble. What should we do? We can't waste any opportunity to salvage scrap. These old experiments could have been dangerous. We should stay away. We offer the mysterious figure some of our food. It receives our offering, tucks it away, then dumps some of the contents of its sack at our feet before moving on. It's a small pile of shiny metal scraps. After hours of trudging, we finally reach the center of the wetlands, a tiny pond lined with some thin reeds, the only water we've seen for miles. It's a lonely, depressing sight against the backdrop of the expanse of gray-brown mud, until we notice that some of the water near the ferns actually looks somewhat clear and drinkable. We study the effect that the reeds have on the water, and harvest some samples to bring back home. We're in desperate need of a way to make our water cleaner. Maybe these plants could be the solution. We can now research the wetlands. We spend some time picking apart the salvage. We gain some scrap from the wreck. Some of us feel a little sick though, after breathing some odd-smelling fumes emanating from the rubble. We finally reach a central area of the university's campus. Some buildings that were once multi-story dwellings surround a relatively open, rectangular area. Benches, tables, and other simple amenities lie strewn about, but still mostly intact. It almost looks like it might have been nice to congregate here long ago. We spend some time thinking about the community that once gathered here. The organization of the campus quad, paired with some of the valuable amenities we salvage, gives us ideas about how to structure our own communal spaces. We can now research the community center. Message arrives. A messenger arrives at our encampment. He has come on behalf of the survivors still in the bunker, who did not elect to come to the surface and explore the world with us when our supplies began to run low. He tells us that starvation was enough to convince even the most stubborn to venture out onto the surface, and that they now desperately want to come and live in our new settlement. Considering their lack of supplies, they have already begun migrating in our direction. The storm bears down. With the dust storm upon us, work nearly grinds to a halt. Fortunately, those with shelter can ride out the worst of the storm in their makeshift lodgings, but we pity anyone trapped outside as the storm rages on. Old farm. The old world had enough food to feed every mouth, and places like these were the key. The stories say that years' worth of food would simply spring from the ground. Crops no longer grow on this farm, but we must still try to learn its old secrets. The journey to the old farm starts to drain the energy of our expedition, even before the heat wave hits us. The sun bakes the sand beneath us like an oven, and before long, many of us begin to feel delirious and weak. Our destination is still beyond the horizon, but our map says it can't be too much further. The heat is taking its toll on us, slowing down our progress significantly. What should we do? Double rations of water for everyone. We came prepared for this. We can't spare any more of our water. Soup kitchen. Even despite the wealth and excess of the old world, there were apparently still many with nothing to their name, those who starved while others ate. These facilities were a feeble attempt to provide food for those who couldn't afford it. Looking at them now, they seem a pitiful attempt at compassion. How could the people of the old world build such frivolous towers of glass and steel, when they could not even take care of their own? After breaking camp one morning, we find that a great portion of our supplies are missing from our packs. A single pair of footprints veil off into the wasteland away from our campsite. The expeditioner who was supposed to be on guard admits to falling asleep during his watch. What should we do? Follow the tracks into the wasteland to track down the thief. These things happen. We will just have to make do. The heat takes a serious toll on our health. Some of us begin to doubt that we'll be making it back home. The stories said the soil would be moist and fertile here, but the ground is cracked, dry, and covered in dust and sand for miles in every direction, and so we barely realize that we've arrived at the old farm before we find the half-ruined farmhouse itself. We're all exhausted by the journey by the time we arrive. What should we do? Take some time to rest in the farmhouse. We can't afford to waste any extra time here. We continue on to our destination. The Zoot Kitchen stands in one of the less destroyed parts of town. Stories say this used to be deep in the poorest slum of the city, but now it is one of the only neighborhoods left standing. Behind some old crates, we find the entrance to a basement locked with a rusty chain. What should we do? We might be able to create enough shear to break the chain using a simple lever made out of scrap. There's probably nothing worthwhile left in there. We take a long time to recuperate in the old farmhouse. We spend a long time recovering, but it's definitely time well spent. After searching the farm thoroughly, it becomes clear that almost nothing of value remains for us to find. A few sun-bleached bones lie far in what once were grazing fields, and the wreck of single tractor is rusted beyond any use. The only saving grace of our expedition is the discovery of the few packets of seeds we find in the farmhouse basement. We spend some time trying our best to understand how the farm might have once been laid out. Even if there was little to salvage from the farm, the understanding of its layout alongside the seeds we recovered could jumpstart our own attempts at agriculture. We can now research the farm. Cans of soup line the walls, but they are long past their expiration dates. They might still be partially edible. Perhaps more importantly, we find a trove of scrapable pots and pans in the basement. We find a musty old cookbook underneath one of the cupboards. Dozens of recipes line its pages, most of which we don't have the ingredients to prepare. Even still, the general theme of the cookbook gives us an idea. By mixing in just a little bit of hot water, we can stretch the limits of even a meager supply of nutrients. We decide to take some of these valuable books back home with us. These ideas might help us improve the very structure of our society. We have discovered the law they need to eat well. Survivors arrive. Finally, the other survivors from the old bunker arrive, weary from their journey, but glad of some semblance of respite. We welcome them with friendly faces and open arms, but we worry inwardly that our community is growing too large to support itself. Accident. While toiling away at the day's work, we hear a large crash, and then some howls of pain. When we go to investigate, we find that a pair of community members has injured themselves in an accident. If only the dangers of our work weren't an unfortunate necessity of our survival. Amusement park. No one knows what purpose this place held in the old world. Tall towers of wood and steel hold up tracks that lead nowhere. Statues of animals stand frozen on strange platforms. It was clearly once bright and colorful, but now all those colors have faded almost beyond recognition. Before we reach the ruin of the old amusement park, an ominous dark cloud appears on the horizon. The wind picks up, and the cloud quickly grows, and before long, a solid wall of dark brown is coming directly toward us. We all know what this means, a dust storm soon be upon us. What should we do? Use some of our scrap to construct some makeshift shelters. We'll just have to hunker down in the nearest ditch and hope for the best. We can't afford to waste time. Storm or no storm, we press on. Wells deplete. Our water extractors have finally depleted the 2 shallow wells we previously relied upon for our water. A pall descends over our settlement as everyone truly begins to understand the urgency of our situation. Until we find some new source of water, all we have left to drink are our rapidly dwindling reserves already extracted from the ground. When they run out, we will very quickly begin to die from dehydration. Planning ahead. As we become more familiar with the confines of this small valley in which we have made our settlement, it starts to become clearer that it is almost entirely dead and barren, completely devoid of any other sources of useful resources, other than those which have already begun to harvest. In the interest of our long-term survival, we should try to find a way out of the valley, so that we might be able to search elsewhere for new sources of drinking water. We quickly try to construct some shelters with our scrap. The storm buffets our senses and makes it difficult to breathe for what seems like hours, but our shelters allow us to emerge relatively unscathed. When we finally reach the amusement park, we are quick to notice some strange graffiti marking many of its still standing structures. Violent and obscene images and warnings like "turn back" and "our land" are scrawled everywhere. We can even hear the sound of harsh voices coming from deeper within. What should we do? This seems dangerous. Let's cut our losses and turn back. We've come too far to turn back. Get ready for a fight. Accounting. A heat wave is coming on. Over the past few hours, the sun's unrelenting gaze has become particularly unbearable. We are losing precious moisture through sweat at an alarming rate, and unprotected reserves of water are evaporating before our eyes. Spurred on by the sight of our precious water evaporating so quickly, we take some time to take inventory of our remaining resources. Our community thus comes to a grim conclusion. Even without the effects of the heat wave, our water is quickly running out. Our farming efforts will also quickly wither without a constant supply of water, meaning that our time here has suddenly become very limited. We need to think of solutions to these problems, and fast. Rationing. Our recent discoveries have proven that our precious vital resources are more limited than ever. Until we think of a permanent solution to our water and food security problems, it would be good to devise some ways to increase the efficiency by which we distribute these important resources. Shopping mall. Money was central to the society of the old world, instead of food, water, or other necessities. Even just before the end, places like these were nearly bursting with people who wanted to exchange that money for useless luxuries. Now, these vast complexes are dead and abandoned, only relics of the distant past. Just as the mall appears to us over the horizon, one of our party members doubles over, falling to the ground. He is clearly in immense pain and seems to be holding a specific spot on his abdomen. Someone mentions that he seemed to be struggling to keep pace with the rest of the expedition earlier too. What should we do? Set up a small camp and hope for them to recover. There's something inside of them that's hurting them. Maybe we can remove it. One of our expeditioners knows a bit of biology. We hold down the afflicted and sterilize a knife. We remove a small piece of black tissue from the afflicted and stitch them up before they lose too much blood. He seems to be stable for now. We'll let him rest for a while, and he can catch up to us later. Moments after entering the mall, we see that human remains are scattered nearly everywhere throughout its interior. Many corpses seem to be clutching brightly colored clothes, leather shoes, or other trinkets, still in near perfect condition next to their decaying bodies. What should we do? It might be unsettling, but we should search the corpses for anything useful. Maybe they're all dead here for a reason. Let the dead lie. It might be unsettling, but we should search the corpses for anything useful. We spend time looting the various corpses. Some of the corpses had bottles of clean water with them. We come upon a small kiosk near the end of our search that still has many stacks of old cups and bottles on its shelves. Pipes connect to taps somewhere underground, and though they have since run dry, it's clear what function they once served. We spend some time studying the mall's water distribution system. It's important to ensure that what little water we have back home doesn't go to waste. Maybe we can use a system like this for our own purposes. We can now research the water distribution center. Science Museum. A great hall of some kind, with tall ceilings and expansive open indoor areas. Long ago, knowledge about the natural world was displayed for all to see, though seemingly not for any specific purpose other than recreation. Nature was just entertainment for them, they took it all for granted. We can only hope to learn from their mistakes. The museum seems even larger as we approach it in person. We carefully step past the broken glass of the entrance and see first a small room near the entryway labeled with a sign reading Guild Shop. We spend some time exploring the gift shop. It's completely ransacked save for a small box in one corner. The words special gift are scrawled sloppily on the wall above. What should we do? Have someone open the box? Ignore the box. Continuing further, we soon hear the echoes of voices coming from deeper within the museum. We approach carefully at first, but soon come upon an unthreatening band of survivors who have set up an encampment inside the museum's halls. Some of them are injured, and they explain that they fought off a gang of bandits not too long ago. What should we do? Offer to have them join our community. Move on. Bandit Scout. As we toil in the day's work, a survivor from our community tells us that he sees a strange, armed wastelander prowling the outskirts of our encampment. A group of us manages to chase him off, but anxiety and doubt still spreads among us about the potential new threat that might burden our already difficult lives. We've come too far to turn back. Get ready for a fight. We press further into the heart of the amusement park before suddenly encountering a gang of bandits. We fight with the bandits. We eventually manage to drive them off, but not before sustaining some serious injuries. After dressing our wounds, we're free to search the park. There's little to salvage, except for the wreck of a food truck parked in an open area. It's clearly well designed for preparing food despite its various size and resource constraints. Something like this might serve us well when it comes to addressing our own food needs. We spend some time studying the amusement park's food preparation and distribution system. Keeping everyone as well fed as possible is one of our top priorities. Maybe we can find some way to apply these techniques to our own community. We can now research the food distribution center. The survivors happily agree to join our community, provided we can care for their necessities. Finally making it through most of the museum, we come to a courtyard outdoors. The fresh air is nice, though unusually humid. We notice that a single oddly shaped cloth tower in the middle of the courtyard seems to be saturated with moisture. A plaque nearby explains the science of collecting water from the air. We spend some time studying the Warka Tower. We could always use more clean water. Maybe constructing something like this back home could help us in that regard. We can now research the Warka Tower. Water loss. A survivor alerts the encampment that our water reserves have sprung a leak. It's only natural that our makeshift tanks will fail from time to time, but we find odd scrapes and dents are evident in the tank near the source of the leak. Some of us can't help but think that sabotage might be involved. Supermarket. Almost anyone in the old world could barter their way to a full stomach in their great markets, where fresh fruits and hearty vegetables were piled in pyramids all year round. Messengers from around the world delivered produce to keep the shelves piled high, even when the season wasn't ripe for harvest. Is it too much to hope same of their plenty might still remain there for us to find? The dusty wasteland around the supermarket is clotted by small patches of odd green formations, all completely covered in spikes. The spikes look sharp enough to be dangerous, but the formations are otherwise completely inanimate. No one in our party knows whether the formations are human-made or naturally occurring. What should we do? Avoid coming near the spiked formations. Try to break one open to see what's inside. We decide among ourselves that the dangers are too great. We give the formations a wide berth and then continue onwards. We find the market shelves completely empty when we enter, and we find little more than the cracked bones of a few old skeletons lying around on the floor. In hindsight, it seems only natural that this place would be one of the first to be looted. A back room, perhaps once a walk-in freezer, is still locked in the back. What should we do? Construct a ram to break down the door. Ignore the locked room and move on. Evacuation Center. As civilization ended, frightened swathes of the displaced gathered here, fleeing the collapse, hoping to be transferred someplace safer. They had no way of knowing there would be nowhere to flee. No place on Earth would be untouched by the destruction. The first level of the courtyard before the evacuation center is covered in barbed wire, steel spikes, and large metal sheets arranged like palisades. We gather that frightened citizens of the old world gathered here for safety when everything began to fall apart. The skeletons that litter the courtyard now tell us they were wrong to trust this refuge's safety. What should we do? Clear a path through the fortifications, straight ahead. Look for a detour around the fortifications that might be less dangerous. We search the perimeter of the fortifications for any sort of safer entrance. After searching for a very long time, we find a small gap in the palisade that permits us entry. Inner chambers of the evacuation center are poorly lit and dank, but we find a central gathering area filled with skeletons through which the sun still illuminates. Crates we find to be filled with sealed rations, and old-world bottled water line the walls, all in seemingly good condition. What should we do? Something other than starvation or dehydration killed all these people. Could it have been something in their food or water? Dozens of airborne poisons might have swept through this place between then and now. The supplies are probably safe. Ignore the locked room and move on. We decide among ourselves to ignore the freezer and continue onwards. We bypass the old freezer. It's probably empty like everything else. The supermarket doesn't seem to have much in the way of useful supplies to offer us, much to our disappointment. However, the blank canvas of the interior makes it easier for us to imagine many ways such a facility might have been used by the denizens of the old world. We spend some time imagining the old function of the supermarket. The supermarket was clearly first and foremost a place for people to buy supplies, but it seems like it could have served as a communal meeting place and sort of informal town center as well. We have discovered the law forbid food self-service. We unpack the rations and add them to our supplies. We were right to trust our instincts, even if the supplies seemed suspicious. This food and water is a great boon for us. We come across a final room towards the back of the safe house complex. Skeletons lie splayed over half-open books, charts, and pamphlets. Examining one of the papers, we find it reads surviving chemical weapons attacks, and the others seem to be along similar lines. We spend some time studying the pamphlets and charts. We doubt that we will ever be attacked by such weapons during our lifetimes, but we are given some ideas by the general guidelines for preserving the safety of a large group of survivors. We have discovered the law: get your buckets out. Refugees arrive. Another group of survivors arrive at our encampment, wanting to join our community. They tell us that they were attempting to live peacefully out on the wasteland when a group of vicious bandits raided their camp and destroyed everything. Scared that the bandits would return if they stayed to rebuild, they packed what little they had left and fled. After wandering for some time, nearly starving, they spotted the smoke rising from the fires of our settlement. Local library. Every town once had a place like this, where volumes upon volumes of knowledge were stored for safekeeping. The eldest among us say that anyone could visit free of charge to read whatever they wanted from the shelves. Despite this, places like these had supposedly fallen into disuse by time of civilization's fall. Still, maybe we can utilize what they once took for granted. The dust-swept streets of the suburban ruins are peaceful and sheltered from the sun, so we take a path through some of the destroyed homes to check for salvage. None of the pantries or cellars we search seem to have any leftover supplies, but we do stumble across a large swarm of cockroaches in one particularly disgusting basement. What should we do? Ignore the disgusting creatures and move on. There's a wealth of valuable protein in that basement, if we can stomach eating insects. Despair. A wave of depression washes over our community. Sentiment that all of our efforts seem hopeless and that the world is dead seems to spread from one survivor to another. There doesn't seem to be any one specific cause other than the obvious state of the world, but it seems clear that the tiny size of the rations we distribute each day doesn't help. There's a wealth of valuable protein in that basement if we can stomach eating insects. We descend into the basement and harvest the cockroaches for their nutrients. Mashing the cockroaches together renders them into a disgusting but edible paste. The community library seems to be almost untouched by the ravages of time. Many books have grown mildew, but most are still readable. Most looters must have been uninterested in anything they couldn't eat, drink, or trade away. What should we do? Let the expedition spend the rest of the day exploring the books. The frivolous stories of the old world are no concern of ours. Monument. While all else impermanent of the old world was washed away by the tides of catastrophe, and then by time, monuments like these, built to their society's supposed greatness, still remain. Wasteful, purposeless works of expensive polished stone, built in dedication to the great achievements of their civilization. How ironic that they now stand alone among the cannibalized remains of that very world. The winds of the wasteland begin to pick up suddenly, and clouds of dust and sand quickly begin to obscure our vision. As we are fumbling in the darkness to don our protective rags and goggles, bandits appear all around us, weapons drawn. What should we do? The bandits have a well-prepared ambush here. We need to flee as fast as possible. Fight the bandits in the storm. The bandits have a well-prepared ambush here. We need to flee as fast as possible. We break into a full-on sprint and try to run against the winds of the dust storm away from the ambush. Eventually, the winds die down, and we try to regroup. Most of us manage to escape from the bandits unharmed, but some of our party never arrive at all. We come across a small tented encampment in the desert. A friendly-seeming group of traders emerge from the camp as we approach, and we greet them amicably before seeing their merchandise. Miserable-looking human beings huddled together in iron shackles. What should we do? Offer to trade our resources to buy the slaves' freedom. Attack the disgusting slavers. We quickly draw our weapons and descend upon the slave merchants. Ivor Wilkinson died from damage. Alvin Baxter died from damage. They're well armed and clearly prepared for a fight, but we eventually kill every last one of them. The slaves seem somewhat wary of us, even after we set them free. Some nonetheless express a desire to join our community. The monument is quite an unusual sight, standing alone as it is in the middle of the wasteland. Some of us who can read make out what is written on the monument. Vertical faces, inscribed in the stone, are a set of guidelines for creating a society that exists in harmony with nature. We spend some time studying the guidelines written to the monument. Perhaps at least some in the old world understood the mistakes of their time. Perhaps we can improve our own society with their advice. We have discovered the law forbid water self-service. Planning ahead completed. As we become more familiar with the confines of this small valley in which we have made our settlement, it starts to become clearer that it is almost entirely dead and barren, completely devoid of any other sources of useful resources, other than those which have already begun to harvest. In the interest of our long-term survival, we should try to find a way out of the valley, so that we might be able to search elsewhere for new sources of drinking water. We spend the night in the library, giving us time to explore what the library has to offer. As morning comes, we feel prepared to continue onwards. Although many of the books in the library seem to be fictional stories with little relation to our current struggles, others seem to offer interesting factual ideas that even apply to the harsh conditions we face today. We decide to take some of these valuable books back home with us. These ideas might help us improve the very structure of our society. Greener pastures. It seems inevitable that we will soon have to pack up what we can and find a new place to settle down in order to make a journey through the wasteland. Though, we will need a sufficient number of healthy workers who will be able to convey our supplies across many miles. The mountain pass. A distant wall of mountains loom in the distance, beyond which may lie new sources of vital food and water. Navigating the single, narrow pass that winds between the otherwise impassable peaks will be difficult and dangerous, but with our dwindling supplies, we must undertake the effort if we wish to survive for much longer. As the long column of our expedition makes its way up the mountain trail, we begin to hear a distant rumbling. The noise quickly grows louder, before suddenly the great boulders of a rockslide are falling all around us. When the dust clears, it is apparent that many of us have been separated on the other side of a new rocky barrier. What should we do? It may take an extremely long time, but we need to try and clear the way in order to reunite with our fellow survivors. We'll die of thirst or starvation if we stay to try and save them. It feels horrible, but we have to leave them behind. We spend an extremely long time trying to remove the newly fallen rocks from the path. Many of our fellow survivors have been injured by the rock fall, some severely, but at least we aren't leaving anyone behind. The trek through the mountains is extremely long and arduous, and after much forced marching some of our expedition begin to protest. A small but significant minority express the desire to turn back, to find some other way back through the mountains, and look for other sources of water back the way we came. What should we do? The map clearly indicates that our best chance of finding water lies on other side of the mountains. They'll die of thirst if we allow them to break off and turn back. They are in charge of their own destiny. Let them do as they please, even if it would mean their doom. Homeseekers. We never expected the simple shallow wells we dug to last us very long, but it is clear that we are now siphoning off the final dregs of what little water they had to give. We must now venture off into the world, into new, uncharted territory, in order to find some way to sustain our needs. Although many of our community have fallen ill since our emergence from the bunker, fortunately we have managed to keep enough survivors sufficiently happy and healthy to support this new mission. With luck on our side, we just might be able to find a new place to call our home. Demo completed. We survived. This concludes our demo. You managed to survive. Hope you enjoyed yourself. We would love to know what you thought of our game. Reach us through the Steam page and our dedicated Discord server. Disclaimer: the scenario that you played constitutes a modified version of our first scenario. Functionalities and designs get deeper and more challenging in the next scenarios. Well, demo completed for Homeseek. And would be interesting to see more of what the developers have planned for a game that has many scenarios where it seems like we're building cities that might not last forever and are going to be temporary shelters as we move from region to region. Frostpunk is all about locking down and bracing for gargantuan storm, but Homeseek seems to be hunkering down for like the giant weather that will hit you, and then to move on to something else, whether it will be rain or sandstorms. I hope you guys all liked it. Thank you very much for your kindness, positivity and support down in the comment section. Thanks for all the likes too. Welcome to all the new subs, and let's look forward to Homeseek official release. Voiceover by Allison L. If you guys want to hear my voice in more videos and want me to be your professional apocalyptic tour guide, poke that like button and drop a comment. I'll try to answer any comments directed at me personally. Have a wonderful day.
Meow.